and in this tutorial we will be building our second practical program, and it's going to be primarily a console application that you could maybe use in several business environments, and I'll show you what I mean. So I already have a employees.txt file with two headers, name and salary, and then the employee list on top, and then several employees' names with their salary on the right. And you'll notice that it has their first and last name, so that's going to be a tricky part with this program that we're going to have to pay attention to. But the primary focus of this program is to be able to read in this file and then display the contents of the file in the console window. And no matter what, if someone goes in and changes this file, maybe throws in another name like Jake Long, and then adds another salary to it, so we added, $82,000 to the salary. Whenever this file updates, we want our program to automatically know that it updates and be able to add that name to the console. So that being said, that's something that we're going to have to really focus on as we build this code. And after we're done building it, I really advise you to try and see if you can go in and use file output and file input together to create a program using everything that we've learned, and modify this program to where you can maybe push the number 1 and you can add a name to the list, or if you push number 2 you can delete a name from the list, and it will constantly be updating this employee list file. And the idea is for it to seem like a human resource program that companies could use to kind of update all the employees that are on their payroll. So that being said, let's continue on and let's start this. Let's start coding this. So the first thing we need to do is include our libraries, and we know that we're going to be dealing with files a lot. So let's go ahead and include that library, the file stream library. And then the other library we want to include, since we're going to be printing out this data in the console window, we're probably going to be doing a lot of output manipulation. So let's include the input-output manipulation library, which is #include IO manip, if you remember from the last tutorial. So now that we have all the libraries that we need, we're going to go ahead and continue on to the main function and set up our file input, so to speak. So we need to include our file input handle with the input file stream declaration, and we're just going to call it input, or we'll give it a different name. We'll call it employee file, and we'll say employees.txt for the constructor, and we'll go over constructors maybe in a future class if I do an advanced C++ tutorial on classes and advanced data structures. But basically this is a function of ifstream, and this is the constructor, and all we're saying is we want to create a file handle called employee file, and we want this file to automatically be associated with this text file. And I know we went over that in the file input tutorial, but I just kind of wanted to rehash your memory about that idea. So then let's set up our checking function to make sure that this file is found. Employee file. We're going to say cout employee text file not found. We'll end the line a few times just so we can throw those in there, and then we'll return -9. Let's go ahead and run it, make sure we don't get any errors and that the file is found. And it appears that the file was found because the process returned 0 rather than -9, so we're good to go. And then let's go ahead and set up some variables to hold this data. So let's make a string employee name variable, and then let's make an int employee salary variable. And these are the two variables that we're going to use. And since we don't know, since we're going to make this program to where you can kind of update this program at any time, and we don't want to have to go in and change the size of our arrays, we're not going to use an array. but instead we're going to actually use our output in our while loop that we use to read in the input. And I'll show you what I mean. So the first thing we need to do after declaring our variables with this program is get rid of these headers, because we don't want to save these headers in any string. And to do that, we're going to use our ignore function. So we're going to say employee file dot ignore, and then the 255 characters in the new line delimiter. That's for the first line, so that's going to ignore this this first line in employees.txt. Now we need to ignore the second line. So we're going to say employee file dot ignore 255 new line delimiter colon colon, and then the semicolon. So now that we've got rid of these headers, we can actually start our pre-read and our post-read and our while loop and start reading in this data and printing it out. So to do that, let's go ahead and comment pre-read. We're going to put in our pre-read right here. But remember, we want to hold the whole employee name in one variable. So we can't just read in one name at a time. We're going to have to read in all this at a time without actually picking up this data. So we can't use getLine and actually read in the whole data. We're going to actually have to make use of our delimiter and stream size with the getLine function. So let's do that now. So for our pre-read, we're going to say getLine. Our employee file is our input stream. And then for the stream size, well, we need to assume that no name is pretty much going to be 50 characters long, because that's going to be a really long name. So like a 50 character long would probably come all the way out here, all the way to the beginning of salary nearly. So we're going to use 50 as our stream size delimiter pretty much. And but first we need to hold it into a variable. So we're going to say employee name. Employee name is our variable, and then we're going to put in our stream size, which is 50. And if we run that, we shouldn't get an error. Okay, so we do get an error, but we need to, and it's probably because we need a delimiter, and so we're just going to throw in a new line delimiter because we shouldn't reach that. And let's see if that runs. And it still doesn't run. So let's look at our functions. Let me go back real quick, and let's see what we can throw in here for a delimiter. So we start out with the input, basic stream, input, and then character delimiter. So I'm pretty sure that the only thing we can do is a delimiter on the get line. And to do that, let's go ahead and say, let's see if this works if we just put in a delimiter on get line. And that does work just by putting in a delimiter. So I don't think, let me add a comma, I think you can maybe, I was thinking maybe you could add in a size, but apparently that throws an error, so you can't throw in a size, you can only throw in a delimiter. So the delimiter that we're going to use, let's go ahead and do that. The delimiter that we'll use is a comma, okay? That'll be the delimiter that we use, and we're going to update our text file, this employee text file, to separate the names and the salaries with a comma. So, you know, it can just be like this. It doesn't even, they don't even have to be lined up correctly or anything like that, but we'll go ahead and do that. So we have this text file, right? And I kind of want, let's make it a little bit prettier so that it looks nice. And we have these commas separating the names and the salary, because the getLine function, as of right now, just off the top of my head, doesn't use a stream size delimiter like the ignore function does. So like if the ignore function, we could actually put in a stream size and ignore up to a certain point. But on this one, we're going to use a delimiter, which is the comma. So basically what's happening with getLine is that we're using the employee file stream, we're storing the data in the employee name string variable, and all the data that we're storing in there is all the data up to this comma right here. which is what we set as a delimiter. So let's save that, and let's throw in our while loop now. So we're going to say while not employee file.eof function. Let's go ahead and set up a post read. We'll comment the function so we know where it is, and our post read is going to be the same as of right now to store our data. It's going to be the same as our pre-read. So we're going to store employee. We're going to store employee name, and then the delimiter of a comma, and then a semicolon. But remember, the pre-read and the post-read isn't complete yet because we need the whole name, and then we also want to store the salary. And to do that, we need to add something in our pre-read and post-read. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to extend our pre-read by a line, and we're going to say employee file, use the input stream operator, and then say employee salary. And the same thing with our post read. So we'll say, sorry about that, employee file, input stream, employee salary. Just like that. And that concludes our pre-read and post-read. And if we run that, everything should run fine with no errors. And we're actually reading in all the data into a variable. But the thing is, we're constantly overriding the same variable because we don't have an array set up yet. Well, we don't need an array because we're going to actually print out everything that we need in this while loop. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say, we're going to set it up. We're going to say cout, and let's actually set up we're going to go ahead and set up our input to where everything works just like we want it. So at the top, we're going to set up how we're going to manipulate our output with cout left. And then we really don't need a set precision and fixed because we're not dealing with decimal values. So we'll just say cout left up there, and then right here we'll say set w, and we'll say 25, and then employee name, and then set w 25. Actually, we won't even need that one since we're using the left orientation. So we'll just say set w 25 employee name. And then I think if we just say employee salary, it should output just like we want into line. And let's see how that works. And there you go. So we have the name, and then the salary, and then a new line, the name, and then a salary, and then a new line. Just like we wanted. But let's make this a little bit prettier. Let's go outside of the loop and let's add some output. So we'll say something along the lines of, right here before our ignore, we'll say cout tab, a few tabs, and we'll say employee, or we'll say human resources payroll list, and then we'll end a few lines, and then we'll say cout set w 25 full name, and then salary, and then we'll end a few lines again. And what this output will do is we'll make it look nice and set it up for us. So we have full name, salary. Okay, so but salary needs to go over more, and I think the reason why is because we have this Jimmy Clark and Benjamin. It's actually picking up all the data to the comma. So just the way it looks right now, even though we have the same width, it's not the same because of the length of these variables. They're actually a lot longer than just Jimmy Clark because it's storing all the white space up to the comma that we used as a delimiter. So let's just push salary out a little bit further. And it's going to kind of be a hit and miss type thing for now. We'll just use 35 and see what that looks like. And 35 is nearly there, right over the top. We'll just add, maybe 37 and see what that looks like. 37, perfect. So we have human resources payroll list, and then we have the header, full name, and then salary, and then we have a whole list of everyone on payroll and their salary. And if we update this employees.txt file, I just want to show you. So we could say Jimmy Johnson, and we'll just add a comma, and we'll give him, 100, or we'll just give him 13,000, and we'll save it. When we run this program again, Jimmy Johnson will be added because we put everything inside our while loop. And that's kind of what I wanted to do for this practical program, was kind of show you how you can update instantly just by using these variables inside the while loop and not having to use a data structure like an array. So I want you to play with this. I want you to figure out maybe a better way to do it on your own if you can, kind of dive into more output manipulation and see if maybe you can, if we changed the delimiter, if we changed the comma, like let's say we pulled the comma all the way to right here, in our text file, that should change exactly how our program looks. So let me just show you that real quick before I leave, because I want to show you that just by changing your text file, it's going to actually change the output of your program, since we're using a comma as a delimiter. So let me just fix this real quick. And since we're using this comma as a delimiter, the variable, like on Jake Long for instance, is actually this long, this many characters. And when we save it, you should be able to see the difference in our program. So you see how much shorter, since our variable names are actually shorter, that these numbers shift over. And that's kind of why I was wanting to show you, and that's why we had to push salary over to kind of compensate for that delimiter being the comma and how far over it was in the text file.